Magic in Gilded works in ways akin to a fourth science. It is rooted in tradition, faith, and rituals. While it is not fully understood by the inhabitants, through trial and error, they have learnt the boundaries and extents of magic, how to best use it for farming, prayer, building, and of course, war. In this video, I hope to give a basic overview of magic in Gilded. I will touch on the states of magic, how it is cast, empty magic, and at the end, I've written a short story to wrap up the video. Without further delay, I hope you enjoy. Magic is a gift. Long before gunpowder, the gods saw what could only be described as chaos. Suffering, corruption, and death stretched from the four seas to the central plains. Disgusted, the gods placed 4 wise men in each corner of the continent. Each man brought with them a unique form of magic. Magic can take the form of a liquid, a gas, a bolt of light, or a prayer. Some forms of magic cast some spells better than others, while some have exclusive powers not granted to the others. Liquids are the most used form of magic by the common folk. Anyone can pick up a brewing book, buy a couple pieces of equipment, and source the ingredients. This has given it the status of the common man's magic, the type you wouldn't catch any other upper-class wizards using. When drank or touched, the spell's effects will be transferred onto the person. How to get a liquid spell, and how to cast other types of magic, will be touched on later. A subform of this spell would be its frozen state. When turned into ice, the spell is locked inside until it is shattered or melted, allowing for rudimentary projectiles to be formed. This method has been put to great use by wizards, mages, and even witches to create ranged magical bullets. Bolts are more common among the great armies of the continent. Great beams of light that afflict anything they hit. They only travel a short distance before fizzling out, however the duration may be affected by adding acceleration agents. They require less equipment to create, however eat more fuel, and requires more skill than the other forms do. Gas is usually a byproduct of the other forms of magic. All forms of magic create some amount of gas waste. The gas retains some of the power and potency of the original spell, and this has lent to it being used in all manner of inventions for its long life and travel. Whatever breathes in the gas or touches the resulting condensation will be affected by the spell. To combat both the spell and the waste form, most mages opt to wear protective masks when performing in enclosed spaces or for long periods of time. To understand the prayer form of magic, you must first understand that one of the key ingredients of a spell is the faith the caster must channel into the spell to make it work. Without the devotion to a god, without the raw belief in a higher power, magic will not work. With this being known, it was only a matter of time before the church discovered that prayer alone could manifest the beliefs of the caster. Prayer magic takes the form of symbols, runes, and light, all created around the subject. Then, the desired effect will be induced once the user pours enough faith into the spell. This is by far the most difficult spell to perform, and the most draining on the body. It can tire the user quickly, and is entirely dependent on their belief, unlike the other spells that require more mechanical casting. Speaking of casting, now we understand the forms magic can take. How do we get them? Well, all spells need the same 3 basic components. Once they are nailed, you can add other steps and ingredients, but without the basic 3, your spell won't work. As gone over previously, faith is a vital component. This means that chaplains and priests are far better at casting spells than the farmhand who prays once a year. Most people mutter or chant prayers while casting magic, and this has an actual effect on the spell being produced. It is well accepted that atheists cannot cast magic, and the church is the ultimate force when it comes to magic. This is the most commonly accepted narrative, and for the most part, it is true. However, as some atheists will tell you, there are ways around this limitation. Faith, devotion, and love does not need to be directed at a god. Instead, it can be just as effective when directed at a person, ideal, or country. Friends, lovers, and family can all take the place of a god's influence in a spell. Whether a spell cast in love to a person is more effective than a spell cast in the love of a god is untested. Also needed is a conductor. This is a material like gold, bronze, or kayaku. It is the main material that harnesses magical energy. It is important to note that magical energy is always around us, and it is never created or destroyed, but instead merely called upon by the conductor, and through it, given holy power. A conductor is engraved with a rune, sigil, or religious passage, and through that engraving, the conductor activates the magical energy. A conductor can be a thick chunk, a thin slab, a melted down liquid, ground into a dust or formed into a tool like a coil for conducting bolts, or a basin for brewing liquids. To make liquids, the basin must be engraved, or the liquid conductor must have had the engraving prior to being melted down. Some conductors are better at some spells than others, so picking your conductor carefully is important. Finally, fuel. Fuel acts as the binding agent between all the ingredients. The main form it takes is heat. Fire, boiling water, steam, and even the human body can be used as fuel. Some other materials do exist, but they tend to be volatile. Black powder, for example, is a ground-up black rock that when it comes into contact with a conductor, explodes with a large amount of energy, enough to act as a fuel. Other steps can be taken to enhance the resulting spell. For example, accelerators and decelerators both increase and decrease certain aspects of the spell, like potency, range, and how long it lingers. Using some decelerators can lead to just the gas from the spell, as mentioned earlier. Without even just one of the necessary steps, you will find that instead of the spell you wanted, you have instead created empty magic. Magic can also exist in an empty state. In this form, the magical gas, liquid, or bolt is an off-white color and is the result from a flaw in the magic casting process or waste from magical equipment. There is another way to get empty magic, but it's a rabbit hole of its own, so it will have its own video. Empty magic has no long-lasting effects, but has notable qualities. The bolt is known to produce a light tickling feeling. The liquid is sold as a food additive due to it tasting of the person's favorite food, or in rare instances, the last food the person had tasted. It depends on the person. The gas form is very similar to the liquid one, sold as a perfume due to its smelling of the person's favorite scent, or of the most recent scent for the same people affected in that way by the liquid form. There are so many other aspects of magic I haven't touched on here, like the god machines, other substances that affect magic, and the Gildeds, but they will get their own video. Now I have the first hurdle out the way, I hope to be getting more consistent with uploads. I don't expect daily or monthly, but at least more than one a year. I do hope you enjoyed, and let me know what you think. As promised, I will now leave you with a story I wrote concerning magic. Long before gunpowder, the gods saw what could only be described as chaos. Suffering, corruption, and death stretched from the four seas to the central plains. Disgusted, the gods placed 4 wise men in each corner of the continent. Each man brought with him a unique form of magic. They were tasked with beating back the evils of the world and rallying man around the words of the gods. The northern man brought the magic of light. Streams of fire and lightning all converged into beautiful bursts of energy. With these powers he vanquished the great demon that had tormented the northern people. And with their lives saved, they turned to the wise man, and he rallied them around the words of the gods. The man of the east commanded the wind and the rain, moving them and shifting them as he saw fit. With this he pollinated the eastern fields, and brought food and good drink to the people, ending 1,000 years of famine with a flick of his wrist. And with their bellies filled, they turned to the wise man, and he rallied them around the words of the gods. The southern man could shift water and bend all its forms, from blood to molten metal. He stood upon a high rock and looked out over the flooded lands of the south. He used his great powers to turn back the tides and free the people from the devastating waters that had collapsed their homes. With their homes now dry, they turned to the wise man, and he rallied them around the words of the gods. The man of the west, however, saw not man, nor nature, but instead the most unspeakable of evils. The people turned to him, but no hope could he give. Instead, he retreated deep, deep underground. There, in cavern and in tunnel, he built a mighty church that stretched out forever. He prayed every day and every night to the gods. His magic had failed, but his faith drove the unspeakable out of the west. Eventually, the wise men died, but they left in their place hope, and faith in the gods, passed down from generation to generation, nation to nation, institution to individual. The faith and the ways of magic lived on. All but in the West, for when their evil had been driven out, the people found no one to rally them around the words of the gods. So they remained destitute and godless, as they are now, forever lost and forever irredeemable. Their ancient magic forgotten, and forgotten was their roots, rotted and withered.